We are live, guys. Mujib, if you want to.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. We're live, coming at you from the Fawakih Manor. Tonight we'll be doing part 2 of Ayats 13 to 27 with Ustadh Omair. This is from the Heart of the Quran Surah Yasin series, and tonight's topics will cover lessons from the village, following the Prophets alayhum salam, bravery, and relying on Allah Azza wa Jal. As always, our topics will be covered by Ustadh Omair, our lead instructor. And since our daylight savings have come in and we've lost an hour, we'll be stopping promptly at 7:45 so we can catch Maghrib. So if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat and we'll be sure to address them at next week. So Bismillah, we'll be starting right now.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen, wassalatu wassalamu ala sayyidina Mawlana Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا من فضلك علما وتعليما إنك على كل شيء قدير نويت التعلم والتعليم والتذكر والتذكير والنفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله وسنة نبيه صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم والدعاء إلى الهدى الدلالة على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته وقربه ثوابه سبحانه وتعالى. Again, in the name of Allah, we ask Allah to increase us in our knowledge and our teaching of others and allow us to be useful and beneficial for all of mankind. Ameen. So welcome to part 2 of our series on the second page of Surah Yasin, Ayats 13 to 27, which encompasses the story of the village to which the messengers were sent. Last week we spoke about the first half of the story in which the messengers come to the village and we saw the reactions of the people to them and how they treated them with vitriol and how they treated them with hatred and what sort of threats and stuff that they made. And we used that as kind of a springboard to talk about the psychology that we as human beings exhibit in situations where we're called to a higher purpose and when we're called to do better, how sometimes we react negatively and how some people react in a bad way. So that was last week, so I don't want to repeat too much since we have a bit of a strict time crunch this week. So inshallah, if you would like to catch up on last week, feel free to follow the video and you can watch it again. But for this week's talk, we want to focus on the second half of the story of the village. And in this segment, the main occurrence that happens is that one of the people from the town comes to where the messengers and the people of the town are debating, and he makes an announcement. So that's kind of where we're going to kick off, inshallah. So starting with ayah number 20, the ayah starts with وَجَاءَ مِنْ أَقْصَى الْمَدِينَةِ رَجُلٌ يَسْعَى. So the translation of which is, there came from the furthest point of the city a man who was moving quickly or striving. From the word sa'i, it's like what we do when we visit Mecca between the hills. So there came from the edge of the town a man who was running toward the discussion that the prophets and the people are having. Or prophets are also, we discussed last week that this is actually referring to the disciples of Jesus, the 3 disciples who were sent to that town. And they were having a discussion with the people of Antioch. So there comes a man from the edge of the city to the square or the area where the people of Antioch are speaking to the disciples. And what does he say? He says to them in the Arabic, Ya qawm ittabi'ul mursaleen, which means, O my people, follow the messengers, or follow those who have been sent. We know, referring to the disciples. So from his statement here, we can infer a few things. First of all, he begins his proclamation or his declaration by saying, Ya qawmi, which means, "O my people." So we know, first of all, that he is from among the people of Antioch. He's one of the people that lives among the people of Antioch, and they at least know him enough that he can address them as my people. And this is kind of what we were talking about last week or the week before, I don't remember. We made a reference to Plato's allegory of the cave, of how usually it's someone from, like, a person from the cave goes out and comes back. So it's always someone that's like familiar to the society, that when messengers come, part of the people believe, usually a small portion, and most of the people do not. Those people have a natural trend that happens to them, which we're going to see later on. He also, we know from the tafsir literature that some of the people mention who he was. Some of them call him an-Najjar. The other names are escaping me right now, but he was basically, as far as we know, not a rich man. Right? Usually when messengers come to a people, the group that gravitates towards them initially is the poor. Right? This was what we saw in the life of the Prophet ﷺ, that it was the poor of Mecca in the initial stages of Islam, the poor and the downtrodden and the slaves that gravitated towards the Prophet ﷺ and Islam. This is also the same thing that happens in the story of Nuh alayhi salam, that the elders of the people of Noah, they rejected him, and really it was just the downtrodden and a few people over the course of Nuh alayhi salam's really long lifetime, that the downtrodden and the weak, they're the ones who followed Nuh alayhi salam. And it's something we see across a lot of prophets in a lot of places, that usually it's the poor and the weak who gravitate towards hope, or who gravitate towards salvation. There's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ in which he says, the word is a little hard to translate into Arabic, but basically that the majority of the people of Jannah will be the simple people. Right? The majority of the people of heaven will be those who are simple, meaning that those who lived simple lives, those who lived poor lives, right? Those who did not have much, those who maybe even weren't necessarily like geniuses like we think of. Like today, this week we had the death of Stephen Hawking, right? Who many people consider to be one of the greatest astrophysicists who ever lived, right? But a staunch atheist as well, right? So the hadith tells us that really the majority of people of Jannah will not be huge, what we perceive to be geniuses like that, but really most of them will just be simple people, poor people, right? And the reason for that is actually very prevalent. I mean, it's very, what's the word? It's very apparent, rather. When we look at society, most of the time, the power of wealth is corrupting, right? It corrupts the fitrah of a person. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Humazah about the people of the hellfire, or some of the people of the hellfire, he mentions what? يَحْسَبُ أَنَّ مَالَهُ أَخْلَدَ. Such a person thinks that their wealth has made them immortal, right? So wealth, oftentimes, it has a diluting power on the person who possesses it, because they, in between their riches, they forget Allah. They forget that they have dependency. They forget that there is a Rabb above them, there's a Lord above them, or a caretaker above them who's watching what they do. Wealth has a fascinating power to corrupt, right? And that's why a lot of the Sahaba didn't used to look at wealth as a blessing. They used to look at wealth as a curse, right? Because wealth, if you don't use it correctly, it's worse for you than if you didn't have much in the first place, right? You're worse off to be wealthy and not use your wealth correctly than if you were poor to begin with. Oftentimes we look, and we and this is going to come up later in our discussion, but we look at the people around us, and we look at our social circumstances, and we look at other people's social circumstances, and we compare based upon just what's visible, and we compare based upon the surface level. Oh, I'm not wealthy, he's wealthy. Therefore, life is unfair. Therefore, Allah is unfair, etc., etc. But we don't know what the spiritual dimensions behind that are. A person can be extremely wealthy in this life, right? And have everything that they want in this life, but we don't know what their affair is going to be like in the next life. Did they use their wealth correctly? Did they use their wealth for the sake of Allah? If not, then it's better off that they didn't have their wealth to begin with. One of the narrations from the Prophet ﷺ was that a man came up to him and he said, "O Rasulullah, ask Allah to make me wealthy." The Prophet ﷺ said no. So then he begged him again, "O Rasulullah, ask Allah to make me wealthy." And the Prophet ﷺ said no. And then he said it, and he kept asking, and he kept asking, until finally the Prophet ﷺ said, "Oh Allah, give him what he desires." And when the Prophet ﷺ makes dua, it's answered by Allah. So the man actually became fabulously wealthy. He became extremely wealthy. And this is one of the Sahaba. This is one of the people who was a Muslim, who was a companion of the Prophet ﷺ. He became fabulously wealthy, and later on in his life, when it came time just to collect zakat on his wealth, he said, "What? No. What is this? Why are you stealing people's money? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that?" His wealth had driven him insane. His wealth had driven him to the point where he forgot all the principles of the religion, and the hadith mentioned that he died in the most terrible way, and that he's among the people of, Allahu Alam, but among the people of the hellfire in the next life, because of wealth. Allah, in saving him from wealth, was actually guaranteeing him Jannah, but when he asked for that to be changed, he was asking for something that he couldn't handle, right? We talked about this a few weeks ago, how we shouldn't question the will of Allah. If Allah gave us a certain situation, we should strive to be patient in it, right? No matter what our situation is, whether it's wealth or poverty, Allah knows where He's putting us. Allah knows the situation that you are in. He's not ignorant, right? He put you where you can handle it. Certain people He gave wealth, certain people He did not. Right? Everyone is tried though. You're tried according to what you have. So anyway, getting back to the story. So this man comes to the people, his own people, and he's one of these downtrodden folk. He's not one of the rich elders of the community. Some say he was just a carpenter that lived on the outskirts of the city. And he comes and he yells to the people, "Oh my people, follow the messengers." And he uses the verb that we talked about, I believe 3 or 4 weeks ago, which was ittaba'a, right? Not just follow, but make yourselves, like mold yourselves unto their example, right? Make yourselves follow them. Follow in their footsteps. Then he continues in the next ayah, in ayah 21, ittabi'u man la yas'alukum ajra. And this is a very important point that he mentions here. And this is related to actually the discussion that we're talking about, which is why I wanted to bring it up. He says to them, follow those who do not ask you for a payment. Right? One of the hesitations that a lot of the people of the past had when the messengers came to them was, oh, now that we accept this religion, or if we choose to accept this religion, all of our wealth is going to disappear. Right? That's a very big hesitation that a lot of people have. The people of Mecca, as we mentioned in our very first lecture, the people of Mecca actually liked the Prophet ﷺ. They trusted the Prophet ﷺ. They knew that, okay, he's a very honorable person, he's a very honest person. They used to call him Al-Amin, the trustworthy one. They used to entrust their goods to him. Their problem was, if we accept Islam, we'll lose our trade, right? That was their big issue. So what they were really concerned with was their own wealth, right? But as this man mentioned here, Habib al-Najjar, he says, listen, they're not asking you to pay them, right? They're not asking you to give them from your wealth so that they can become rich and you'll become poor, right? This is never a theme from Allah or from the prophets in which they come and then they demand all of your wealth from you. That's actually one of the signs of people who are false prophets, right? What do we see in a lot of modern cults? What do we see in a lot of these modern, strange kind of societies? They bleed people dry of their money, right? There's a lot of modern pseudo-religions that, in order to progress in the religion, what do you have to do? You have to pay, right? If you want to get to the next level, you have to pay more money. If you want to get to this level, you have to make a $100,000 donation. Or if you want to get to this rank in this religion, you have to make a $500,000 donation or whatever, right? Any true religion as revealed by Allah, at its core, is not a religion of taking wealth from people. Okay? Rather, what does Islam do? Someone might say, oh, well, why do we have zakat then? Right? Why do we have this? Why do we have that? The law of Allah is actually not to take wealth for the sake of Allah. When you're giving zakat, you're not giving wealth to Allah. You're not giving wealth to the prophets. Zakat is actually a system of redistribution. Right? It's redistribution of wealth among the Muslims. Right? You're not taking and giving your money and it's going to waste. When you're giving your zakat, you're giving it to part of your society. You're actually helping yourselves as a society by bolstering up your weak, by bolstering up the poor, by bolstering up those who have debts, for example, right? But it's not like we're taking a big pile of cash and burning it at an altar, right? That's not what zakat is about. Zakat is, this person has a lot of money, this person has a little bit of money. Let's share it a little, right? That's what zakat is. It's going from people to people. Even the Prophet ﷺ, when he would ask for wealth from the people, he would ask who's going to give this and who's going to give this. Usually it was because of some urgent thing that the Muslims needed. So for example, before the Battle of Badr and Uhud, the Prophet ﷺ asked for wealth. He asked, okay, who can give money? Who can help us out? Why? It was so that the Muslims could arm themselves. Right? Because if they don't arm themselves and if they don't defend the Muslim homeland, well, guess what? Then we're all going to die. Right? So it's really using the wealth for yourself. It's not a religion where people, the upper echelon take all the money and keep it among themselves. We don't behave like that as Muslims. Any true religion doesn't do that. Right? Furthermore, Allah says in the Quran, in another ayah in Surah Taha, He says, I think it's وَمَا نَسْأَلُكُمْ رِزْقًا, right? I think that's what it is. Basically, He says, we don't ask you for rizq. نَحْنُ نَرْزُقُكُمْ. We're the ones giving you rizq. Why would we ask you for rizq? The word is sustenance, right? Rizq, sustenance. Allah says, we're not asking you for anything. In fact, in comparison between you and Allah, there's nothing you could ever possibly do for Allah. Right? We don't need anything from you. And then He re-emphasizes that point. In fact, we're the ones who give it to you. Where do you think your wealth came from? Right? And that's just your possessions. That's just your money. That's just your the things you own, your house, your whatever. If you look at your real wealth, your body, your health, where did that come from? Right? You didn't buy the body that you inherit, or that you inhabit rather. You didn't buy the health that you enjoy. You didn't purchase every single one of your cells, right? You didn't purchase your respiratory system. Allah gave it to you for nothing, basically as a gift, to be completely honest, right? You never even asked for existence. Allah gave it to you. نَحْنُ نَرْزُقُكُمْ. We're the ones who give you. Why would we need anything? Right? But zakat and these other monetary issues that come up, one, they're to help the community around you, and two, why does Allah tell you to give sadaqah or give this or give that? It's more to test your sincerity, rather than Allah saying, oh, I need this. Allah doesn't need your prayers, Allah doesn't need your fasting, Allah doesn't need your hajj, Allah doesn't need your zakat, Allah doesn't need your sadaqah, Allah doesn't need anything from you. He is as-samad. Allah is the one who has absolutely no need. Everything else needs Him. We talked about this a few weeks ago, right? So Habib al-Najjar is making that point here. Guys, they're not asking you for anything, right? They're trying to lead you to infinite reward in the next life without asking you for anything in return, right? If you think about an ideal lifetime, the way that we should live our lives, it's nothing but a series of gifts. The first gift was the gift of your existence, right? The next gift was the gift of developing your body. And we're talking about the stages of life, right? First, Allah develops your body as a cell, as a zygote. Then He develops you as a embryo. Then He develops you as a fetus. Then He develops you, He proportions out your body in the womb. Then He gives you life, right? He brings you out into the world through childbirth. Then He continues to nurture your body until you reach full bodily maturity. Then He begins to develop your mind, right? Then you get to a point later in life when most people say is at around the age of 40, where your mind is fully developed, right? Your wisdom becomes fully developed. And you continue to develop. Even Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he first when he first started displaying white hair in his beard, he said, "Oh Allah, what is this? Why is my hair turning white?" He said, "Oh Ibrahim, this is dignity." And he said, "Oh Allah, increase me. Right? Give me more then." So gift after gift after gift after gift after gift. A series of gifts, right? When you die, then what do you get? There's another gift. For the mu'min waiting in the grave, you get a taste of Jannah. On the Day of Judgment, there's another gift. If you're a good believer, you're given a cool shade on the Day of Judgment, right? Then there's another gift. Allah envelops you in His mercy, right? Allah gives you the gift of walking over the sirat, where many people will fall. Allah enters you into Jannah. Before that, you drink the water from the hand of the Prophet ﷺ at the Hawd, after which you never have any thirst. And then you enter into Jannah. Did you pay for any of that? Did you have to spend a dime on any of that? No. It was a gift. A series of gifts. None of which you asked for, and none of which, frankly, you could earn. None of which you could even pay for. Right? So Allah's never asking you for anything, asking you for a fee, right? If Allah took us to account for that, as Allah says in another verse of the Quran, but in a slightly different wording, there wouldn't be anyone on the earth alive. There's no one deserves this, right? As I think I mentioned in the previous 5 Lights lecture that we had at Rajan, that if you exist now, you've been granted immortality. Already, it's guaranteed. The fact that you exist, Allah has guaranteed your immortality. Allah says about people, خَالِدِينَ فِيهَا. Right? Khalideen. He uses this word to describe people. They are khalideen. They are eternal. So what are you doing in your life then? You're just choosing where you are eternal. Life is a choice given to you. Hey, this is a time, you're kind of just setting up your resume. Right? Do you want to be eternal in this place, or do you want to be eternal in this place? Choose, go ahead. Is Allah forcing you to pray? No. Is He forcing you to fast? No. Is He forcing you to be a good person? Any one of us has the potential to be the worst person. I'm not advocating that, but any of us has a potential to be the worst person that ever lived. And you could go around killing and stealing and whatever and looting and shoving your mouth full of donuts and whatever you want to do. You could be a horrible person. It's your choice, really. No one's forcing you to do anything, right? But you're choosing at the end of the day. Even that choice is a gift from Allah. You're not compelled to follow one direction or another. Do what you want, right? But there will be a consequence. Choose that life, you will be eternal in a certain place. Right? Choose a life of restraint, a life of respect, a life of goodness, a life of piety, a life of helping people, a life of showing mercy to people. You'll be eternal in a much better place, right? gifts upon gifts upon gifts upon gifts. Right? Every breath we take is a gift. Right? Most of us don't realize how your breaths are gifts until we have heart attacks. A'udhu billah. Then you really see what the gift of your heartbeat was, what the gift of your breath was, right? When you can't breathe again, you'll see what kind of gift that is. That's why it's said that every gift is a precious jewel. Every breath is a precious jewel that you can never purchase again, right? So anyway, Habib al-Najjar, he goes to the people and he hammers this point. They're not asking you for any ajr. They don't want anything from you. In fact, the messengers are here to give you more. Right? وَهُمْ مُهْتَدُونَ. And they themselves have been guided. These words are very important. They are muhtadun. They have come across guidance and they have followed it. This is important because it's setting the stage for the people and showing them that just how these people were normal people and they became messengers of a messenger, they became disciples of Jesus himself, as we talked about last week or the week before, there's also room for us. There's also potential for us. Right? They became guided, you can be too. Right? This is not a sort of hierarchy or a sort of system that you're born into that you have no control over. Right? This is not a set in stone, you belong to this echelon and you belong to this echelon, or you belong to this caste and you belong to this caste. No, they're guided, you can be guided too. Right? You can also be guided. Hum muhtadun. They chose to be guided. So the door is open, the pathway is open. Right? So they're not asking you anything. Second, they're following a process of guidance that's open to anyone. Right? So really at this point, his da'wah is so strong, his invitation is so, mashallah, sound, that he's literally removed all the barriers that they could think of, right? He's removed a monetary barrier, societal barrier, our society's going to crumble, we're going to become poor. No, that's not true. He's removed any other barrier we might think of. To be a disciple is, something not everyone can achieve. No. It's all possible, right? If we just start. Hum muhtadun, right? And then furthermore, he continues and he destroys the ground on which they rest their belief. He says, وَمَا لِي لَا أَعْبُدُ الَّذِي فَطَرَنِي وَإِلَيْهِ تُرْجَعُونَ. And he says, what is wrong with me? Literally, مَا لِي. What is with me? Why should I not worship the one who created me? Right? And this is the first time in the surah where we have an explicit mention to the central theme of entire Surah Yasin that we mentioned in the very first talk, right? Which is this is the surah that primarily explores the connection between us and Allah as our creator, right? So this is one of the arguments that Habib al-Najjar uses, that why shouldn't I worship the one who created me? What is wrong with me if I do that, right? And here's a very, very astute point that he's making. Why? Because the people that he's coming to are idol worshippers, right? They're people who worship idols and stones. Now imagine this. Not the father, there's actually just the relative of Ibrahim alayhi salam. The Quran actually says abati, but some of the commentators have said that it wasn't his biological father. Some have called it his uncle. But the uncle of Ibrahim alayhi salam, what did he used to do? He used to make idols and then he used to worship them, right? And Ibrahim alayhi salam as a child, saw the absurdity of this, right? So this is the same argument that Habib al-Najjar is using here. Listen, he says, he created you, and yet you don't worship him. But you create something, and you worship that. Look at the absurdity, right? it's the right of the Creator to be worshipped. Why would you worship your own creation? Right? That's the point he's bringing up. What is wrong with me if I don't worship the one who created me? Why do you all, it's implicit within the statement, he didn't say it, but it's understood from the statement that why are you worshiping something that you created yourself? Right? Why are you worshiping something that you yourself created? Right? And this is where the, the argument of, monotheism finds its strongest kind of point, is that there are many people around the world who make a god one day and then worship it the next day, right? You are a human being capable of giving form and giving beauty and giving aesthetic quality to an inanimate object, and then you put that object above yourself, right? It's the greatest form of delusion, isn't it? It's the greatest form of just absurdity. We don't worship the chairs we make. We don't worship the tables that we make. Yet we make something even simpler than a chair. We make a rock in the shape of a human being, and we start worshiping that. Right? On the Day of Judgment, all the idols that people have made will be brought forth. Allah will summon all the idols. In the Quran they're called the shuraka. Everything that was made as a partner to Allah, Allah will call it forward. You'll say to those idols, you'll say, did you command people to worship you? And they'll say, I'm just a rock. I wasn't doing anything. Right? I'm just a tree. Right? And then the people on that day, they'll realize their stupidity. Right? Like, oh my God, yeah, we were just worshiping a rock that we picked up off the ground and we carved a little. And we were people and these are rocks. Right? So he's mentioning that entire point within his succinct argument that why shouldn't I worship that which created me? Right? It's a very astute point. It brings all of these things into the fray. Right? Allah is your creator. All the stuff that we talked about, life and our development and the way that we grow and we're taken care of, and our existence coming from non-existence to existence, right? We were the receiver of all of that. Why shouldn't we worship the one who gave us all of that? Why would we worship something that did nothing for us, right? As the Quran describes idols, لا تضر ولا تنفع. They don't do anything. They don't harm you, nor do they benefit you, right? As Ibrahim a.s. pointed out again, as a child, right? He went into the temple, he broke all the idols with an axe, and he gave the idol and he hung it on the biggest one. He gave the axe and he hung it on the biggest idol. And the people come back and they say, what happened to all our idols? They've been destroyed. And Ibrahim a.s. says, why don't you ask the biggest idol? He has an axe. Okay? And they know then, they're stuck. Right? You know we can't ask the idols, Ibrahim. Then why do you worship them? Right? That's exactly the point that Habib an-Najjar is making, although in a different way. Right? He's tying it more to a personal level. The one who created me, the one who created, by extension, you, that's the one who deserves to be worshipped, not the things we create. Right? And it's very, mashallah, it's very fitting that this is coming from a carpenter who spends his life making other things. Right? So he knows the hikmah of his craft. Right? مَا لِيَ لَا أَعْبُدُ الَّذِي فَطَرَنِي وَإِلَيْهِ تُرْجَعُونَ. And you also know, and he mentions another point, so he ties the beginning to the end. He's the one who created you, this is where you came from. وَإِلَيْهِ تُرْجَعُونَ. And this is where you're returning to as well. Right? Because all of us know what? The only certainty in life is death. Right? Or according to some, death and taxes. Right? Right? The only certainty in life is death. Right? So you know that you're going somewhere. You know, every person with a sound intellect knows that this is just temporary. This is just fleeting. as you were born, so too shall you die. Right? And that's actually according to a lot of I don't want to call them philosophical, but studies, guess philosophical or otherwise, that this is the biggest kind of fundamental question or idea that we have to grapple with our entire lives, right? Is that the knowledge that you're going to die, right? This is something that you and I, all of us, have to prepare for. And this is something, of course, in our modern society, which we just brush off to the side, right? We don't want to think about it. Even our elderly, the people that are closest to death, what do? We put them away in homes. We remove them from society. Hey, we don't want to think about you, because we don't want to think about death, right? But the more you don't think about death, the more terrifying it becomes, right? You have to know it. You have to confront it. It's as real as you and I breathing. Just as we breathe, so too do we have to face death, right? One of the miracles of the Quran, if you read the Quran with a keen eye, you'll notice that on every single page of the Quran, every page, there's a mention of death, or there's a mention of the Day of Judgment, or there's a mention of the afterlife, or there's a mention of the ghaib. And those are all related things. Death is the greatest ghaib that we have to confront, right? The greatest hidden reality. Every single page of the Quran reminds you of this. Every single page of the Quran forces you to confront your mortality. Why? Not because it's a morbid topic, right? It's actually not morbid. We know that death is just a transition. But because it's scary, because it's fearful, because we don't think about it enough, it becomes like a monster that we, oh, I don't want to think about it. No, but you have to. Because you and I, all of us are going to face that reality one day. Right? Ilayhi turja'un. You're returning to him whether you know it or not. Right? And then he says, and this is kind of getting back to the point that we were making, أَتَّخِذُ مِن دُونِهِ آلِهَةً. Should I take gods other than him? And what he means by gods here is idols, right? Should I take these stones and these rocks as gods other than Allah, when, as we mentioned already, you're the people that made them, they're inferior to us, these are things that we made with our own hands, that nose of that deity, Bob carved it, right? Why would I worship that? Right? Why would I take these things as gods rather than the one who created me? Right? إِن يُرِدْنِ الرَّحْمَنُ بِضُرٍّ لَا تُغْنِ عَنِّي شَفَاعَتُهُمْ شَيْئًا. It says in the next part of the ayah. If the Creator, the Almighty, Allah, Ar-Rahman, if He wanted something from me, if He wanted to give me harm, what are these things going to do? Right? What are these things going to do? The one who created me, if He wanted to harm me, what is my creation going to do for me? Right? He's again speaking about these levels of reality. There's you in the middle, there's your creator, your God, and then there's your creation, right? If in this hierarchy, in this scale, if the God above you wants something harmful for you, what is your creation below you going to do? Right? There's no connection whatsoever, right? If someone above you wanted to harm you, why would you look to someone below you? Hey, that guy up there wants to harm me, can you help? There's no connection. There's nothing that is possible. Right? If Allah wanted something from me, khalas, end of story. Right? Allah's will always comes to fruition, whether you like it or not. Right? Of course, and this is key, he mentions a specific word here. He actually doesn't even say the word Allah. He says the word Ar-Rahman. Right? Because we know at the end of the day, whatever Allah actually wants from us is a mercy. Right? Whatever Allah wants from us is actually merciful. Even when Allah punishes, even when Allah destroys, there's a mercy behind it that we don't know. when an earthquake envelops a nation or envelops a city and all the people in that city die, if our lens, if our scope is only looking at this life, we see it as a tragedy. And of course it is a tragedy, right? But if you look at it from the perspective of eternity, all those people have entered Jannah. At the end, that's a victory, right? Their judgment is over. It's been sealed. When a person dies of a stomach pain, it's very painful. We look at that and we say, oh my God, such pain that they're going through. And the Prophet ﷺ says that person dies a martyr. Right? Why do we see certain things as tragedies and others as not? Because we limit our own scope. Right? If you think death is the end, well then yes, then life is a tragedy, really. Then the entire life is a tragedy. But if you view death as a transition into eternity, right, then life is not a tragedy. If you die today or tomorrow, or in 50 years, or in 60 years, eternity is waiting for you. This is just a drop in an ocean. Right? So everything is actually mercy. Everything is actually rahmah. Then he continues in the next ayah and he summarizes everything for them. I'm just going to wrap up quickly because we only have a few minutes. If I was such a person that believed in all of these things, he says, Inni idhan lafi dhalalim mubin. If I was such a person, I would surely be an absolute dalal. And dalal is actually a hard word to translate into English. The literal meaning of dalal is being lost, right? Or the Muslim version of that is astray. One of the key words that only Muslims use: astray, and circumambulate, and ablution, right? Dalal, being lost. Literally it means being lost. But dalal in this context is like, it's honestly, it's very sad. It's the way that a lot of people live life nowadays, where it's almost like you're absolutely and completely aimless, Many people have this feeling. I've heard it from so many of my friends and so many people that I've grown up with. The perfect way to capture what dalal means is a question that many people ask. What is the point of life? Right? That is utter dalal. What is the point of it all? Right? Because that expresses just absolute, I have absolutely no idea what's going on. Right? That's dalal. Where you're just clueless. You're not just lost. You're so lost that you don't even know you're lost. Right? You're just in a state of complete shock that I don't even know what's happening. What is the point of all of this? Right? That's dalal. Now, Habib al-Najjar, apart from being a craftsman, this is one of the best examples of how to do da'wah. This short few verses here, by the way, just don't be a da'i if you can't emulate Habib al-Najjar. Just look at the way he mentions all these things, right? He gives people hope. He gives people comfort. And then at the end, what does he say? He doesn't even say, you're all losers and you're all lost. What does he say? He says, if I was like this, I would be lost, right? Notice just the phrases that he uses. He ties it back to himself, right? He doesn't confront the people, as unfortunately some of our more fiery brothers do, that you're going to go to hell. No. He ties it to himself, right? Man, I really I don't know why I would worship idols. If I did that, I would surely be lost, right? It's a much gentler way to get across the point, right? The Prophet ﷺ was more in touch with the reality than any human being to ever live, right? The Prophet ﷺ, when he spoke, he had absolute haqq in what he said. And yet, in his discourse, he was the gentlest of people. The gentlest of people. When a man wanted to commit zina, he didn't bash him upside the head and say, you disgusting creature, and how could you, and blah, blah, blah. He took him to the side. And he didn't even say, you're horrible, you're disgusting. What did he say? Listen, how would you feel if someone did this to your mother? How would you feel if someone did this to your sister? How would you feel if someone did this to your niece, right? The way he spoke is absolute poetry, right? Because he spoke in a way that captivated people's hearts. He didn't just dash forward and, with really vulgar talk and, just making people feel horrible about themselves. You can't do da'wah that way, right? The worst person to ever live was Pharaoh, right? Pharaoh utterly believed he was a god. And yet, two of the greatest prophets to ever live, Musa alayhi salam and Harun alayhi salam, what does Allah say to them? قُولَا لَهُ قَوْلًا لَيِّنًا. Speak softly to him. Right? Go to Pharaoh. Yes, he's the worst person to ever live. Speak softly. Be gentle. Right? Be gentle. This is a lesson for us. If you can't be gentle, here's a key for you guys, right? If you can't be gentle with your spouse, if you can't be gentle with your kids, if you can't be gentle with your parents, please stay out of the dawah business. Okay? Don't get involved. Until you can be nice to the people around you, do not go do dawah, please. Right? As one of my teachers, Habib Omair, says, the true da'i is the one who their concern for the people that they are inviting to Islam is so strong that they spend the nights awake in tahajjud, crying and making dua for them. If that's not your level of commitment to guiding people, to helping people, don't do da'wah, please. You do more harm than good. We don't need debates, right? We don't need fiery champions and hell and brimstone kind of lectures. We don't need that. Right? We need that for ourselves to wake ourselves up, but we don't need that for other people. Right? We need to be gentle. Follow the message of follow the example rather of the prophets. Follow the example of Musa and Harun. To Pharaoh himself, they were told, be soft and gentle. Right? Everyone that's alive today is a lot less than Pharaoh, trust me. Right? So you should be even more gentle to them. Right? So, and he captures that perfectly, Habib al-Najjar, in this, because he says, Inni, man, I would be in such a great loss. He doesn't even put the loss, he doesn't accuse them of dalal. He says, I would be in dalal. Right? It's such a subtle phrase, but it captures perfectly how to do da'wah. Right? And then in the next ayah, he says, Inni amantu bi rabbikum fasma'un. There's actually debate about who says this ayah. Some of the scholars said that it was Habib al-Najjar, the carpenter, who said it. Some of them said it was actually one of the messengers, one of the disciples who said it. I believe in your Lord. It makes more sense that it's Habib al-Najjar. Here there's a shift actually. Habib al-Najjar, the carpenter, is actually addressing now the prophets. I believe in your Lord. So he's making his declaration. And even in this, he's doing da'wah, by the way. Right? Because you lead by example, right? So he's showing the example. He's addressed his people. He's made his points. He's one of the people. They know him. Now he leads by example. I'm the first one who believes in your Lord. Right? Even in that, he's showing sincerity and kindness. I believe in your Lord. Fasma'un. So listen to me. Right? But like I said, scholars have debated who actually says the ayah or not. Anyway, so this beautiful person, this amazing person, Habib al-Najjar, what happens to him? Just like in the allegory of the cave, he's killed. His people murder him. Right? And what happens in the next ayah? The ayah says, قِيل udkhul al-jannah. It is said, literally, that's all it says. It is said, enter Jannah. Right? Enter Jannah. This is also a lesson for us as people who want to do da'wah. Your goal should be Jannah. Your goal shouldn't be to become famous, to become rich. I want to be the greatest da'i in the world. I want everyone to call me a da'i. No. Look at Habib al-Najjar's life. Right? Calling people, calling his qawm, kindness he showed, the compassion he showed. At the end, they killed him. Right? That's dedication to da'wah. So Allah says to him, Udkhul al-Jannah, enter Jannah then. And then probably the most amazing part of this ayah, or this whole story, and this really, again, I keep hammering that point, but this is really the characteristic of a person of da'wah, a person of summoning to Islam. Even in Jannah, what does he say? قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون. Man, if only my people knew. He's in Jannah, he's thinking about his people. In Jannah, he's still thinking about his people. بما غفر لي ربي. If only they knew Allah's maghfirah to me. As we mentioned, maghfirah doesn't just mean forgiveness, right? It means a lot more than that. Maghfirah is oftentimes equated to Jannah itself, because literally the root is covering. If only they knew how Allah enshrouded me, how Allah covered me. وَجَعَلَنِي مِنَ الْمُكْرَمِينَ. And He made me among the honorable ones. Right? This is the himmah that a person of da'wah should display. A person of summoning to Allah, even after their death, they should be thinking about their people. Right? If we don't have that dedication, honestly, don't get involved. Right? First, learn to be kind to your parents. First, learn to be kind to your siblings. First, learn to be kind to your spouses. First, learn to be kind to your children. First, learn to be kind to your friends. Right? When you start to see humanity as your own brothers and sisters, then you can start to do da'wah. Otherwise, don't get involved. Right? Unless you have this kind of himmah. Right? Alhamdulillah, we haven't passed away yet. Habib al-Najjar, even after he passes away, he thinks about them. Well, this is what Habib Umar was mentioning, that even in the small death, which is sleep, right, you'd still be thinking about the people who you care for. That's why Habib Umar said you should wake up for tahajjud and pray for the people you're doing da'wah for. Just like Habib al-Najjar, after death, is still remembering his people. Right? Ultimately, da'wah is an enterprise of mercy. You're trying to save people from themselves. That's what da'wah is all about. You care so much about others, you're saving them from ruining themselves. It's not a gang war. Right? We're not here to bolster Islam's numbers. We're not here to have a bigger collection, a bigger posse. Right? You're not going to guard Islam. Allah Himself has said this book is going to be guarded until eternity. Allah guaranteed that. Right? So all we need to worry about is, do I love my fellow human being enough? Do I care about them enough? Do I have enough compassion about them that I lose sleep thinking about their salvation? Trying to save them from themselves? Right? It's like when you see a drug addict, right? What are you trying to do when you're dealing with an addict? And I mentioned this several times, right? When you see a person in addiction, it's very scary. It's not a pleasant thing whatsoever. Right? When you have a drug addict, you don't attack them and bombard them. Right? You try to save them from their own destructive appetites. That's the exact same approach we have when we're doing da'wah. We try to save people from themselves. Right? So I know we're a bit over time, but we'll conclude with that because we have to read, we have to pray Maghrib soon. And we have time for like one question, inshallah, if anyone has a question. So, any questions online?
No.
No? Okay. So inshallah, we'll stop there. Oh, mashallah. So, we have a special announcement. Today is Saif Omar's birthday. So, happy birthday. Eid Mubarak, Eid Milad. Eid Mubarak too. Eid Milad Sa'id. And we ask Allah to continue to allow Saif to do good and extend his life and give him mercy and give him barakah in everything that he does, and allow him to become one of the beloved brothers of the Prophet ﷺ, and allow all of us to benefit from him, and to allow the entire ummah to benefit from his works. Ameen. Inshallah, Allah allow us to learn from the example of Habib al-Najjar, and allow us to become closer to him through the secrets of Surah Yasin. Sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi sallam. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al-mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Inshallah, we'll pray Maghrib in 2 minutes.
And in those 2 minutes, I just want to occupy 1 minute of your time. Earlier, Ustadh Omair mentioned 5 lights. That's our quarterly retreat that Fawakih does. We had our first one in October, and our next one is going to be not this weekend, but the next weekend, March 23rd to the 25th. At 8 p.m., we'll be sending an email to everyone registered for this Surah Yasin class. And if you purchase your tickets for the entire weekend, it's actually $25 discounted than after this weekend. And last retreat, we covered the 3 quls of the Quran. And just my experience with that, if I could share, in Surah Al-Kawthar, Ustadh Omair mentioned the 3 ayats are like the three-dimensional existence. And these really acute observations are what happened during these retreats. So if I can give that example, Inna Ataynika al-Kawthar, God gave you a soul, ruh. God gave you Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that's the Kawthar. Fasalli li rabbika wanhar. So God also gave you a nafs, and you need to really train it to submit and to worship. Inna sha'niyaka huwa al-abtar. Your body is what's going to be lost. You have no progeny after death. So those are the kind of insights that I still use in my prayer, thanks to Ustadh Omair at that 5 Lights retreat. And next 5 Lights is going to cover Ayat al-Kursi, the opening of Surah Al-Rahman, Surah Al-Duha, Surah Al-Inshirah, and the end of Surah Al-Baqarah. So you really don't want to miss 3 days of really in-depth study of short surahs that we use in our daily lives, in our du'as, in our prayers. So you'll get your emails. You can check the Facebook. We'll have the events live. Purchase your tickets. There are only about 10 or 15 spots left.
When is the event?
The event is Friday, Saturday, Sunday of next weekend. So the 23rd to the 25th. You cover housing, cover sleep, food. It's really just getting an intimate moment with the Quran from our busy lives. So that's about it. And inshallah. Oh, and we'll post the link in the comments.
Yes.
Yeah, we will, and you'll get them emailed, and it's on Facebook. So $25 discount if you sign up, and just a few spots left, inshallah. And we'll be ages anyone above 15. Yes, inshallah.